a few people in my group leaving the MTC were waiting on visas. So we ended up leaving like a half week after we were supposed to. So we were leaving Utah, the MTC, on a Friday. And we took a plane and we landed in Buenos Aires, and we had to wait in Buenos Aires for a long time to get a flight to our mission. So we didn't end up getting to Resistencia until probably about midnight. And there were three or four elders with us, and we met the mission president, we met his wife, and they just kind of put us in a car and they drove us to the assistant's house, which was right across the street from the mission home. And I remember driving through the cities and thinking, like, this is where I'm gonna be for the next 2 years, and it was a little scary at first. It just seemed so different. I got there in October. It was actually the first day of General Conference, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But it was the October General Conference, and, we got there, and there were just, people riding motorcycles around without helmets, and, there was a lot of loud music, and it was midnight, which isn't, a normal time to hear so much stuff like if you were in the States. Anyway, we get to the assistant's house, and we sleep in these bunks, and we didn't get to bed till probably 1 a.m. And I remember just kind of laying in bed and listening to what was going on out in the streets. And I didn't understand that was just the capital city of the mission, and that I wouldn't spend any time in that city, but I remember thinking, this is where I'm going to be for the next 2 years, and I wasn't excited about it. I didn't like it. I was like, this is like too much. It was just kind of a sensory overload, I guess. But we went to sleep. We woke up the next morning at 6:30. And I remember thinking, whoa, we got here late. We should be able to wake up late. But that wasn't the case. So we woke up and, we did our showers, our exercises, everything. And we went across the street to the mission home. We didn't do any contacting or anything. We just went straight to the mission president's home. He started, training us. The mission president's wife talked through wearing sunscreen, drinking lots of water, all that stuff. And then, they just kind of gave us a rundown of what we were going to be doing. And then we met our companions. It's a really big mission. So I remember finding out that I was going to be with my trainer, and that we were going to Posadas, which was about 5 or 6 hours away by bus. And I just remember thinking, as we sat and they were talking us through what was going to be happening in the mission, they showed us a slideshow of, all the missionaries, like all their baptisms, all their areas. And they would show, like, it looked very geographically diverse. Like, sometimes they were in a jungle with a waterfall, and sometimes they were in a desert with nothing around them. And my companion started explaining to me, he was like, well, yeah, you got lucky because, this is the part where it's really jungly, there's a lot of rivers and everything. So as we were leaving the mission home, getting on our bus to go to my first area, I started picturing like grass huts and like rivers and canoes and like Indiana Jones stuff. And based off what my companion was describing, that's like exactly what I thought I was going to get myself into. And then after 5 hours on a bus, we got to the city, and it was like a big city, like bigger than my hometown, bigger than, a lot of places I'd been. And we went straight to the stake center because it was General Conference. So we sat and we watched, and I met all the other missionaries. And then, we went home, and I remember thinking to myself, this isn't what I was expecting at all. There's like no jungle, there's no river or anything. So we took a cab to our apartment, and it was just on a little dirt road, and it was kind of more what I was expecting. A little more jungly, lots of trees, very humid. And we got there for the first night. We said our prayers, planned the next day, put my bags away, and then, we just kind of went to bed and just, it was crazy because within, 24 hours, I went from not knowing anything to understanding quite a bit more and knowing, where I was and what I was going to be doing for the next few months. There was not a lot of whitewashing going on my mission. So my companion had been there for 2 transfers. And the person that I had just replaced in that area had been there for 3 transfers. So he already knew the area. And luckily when I got there, we had a lot of good investigators. So I remember the first time we went out, as it was general conference, we woke up the Sunday, we were at the stake center all day, and I remember meeting all the new members, and they were all really happy. They were, oh, a fresh green missionary, doesn't speak a word of Spanish, all that. But we got back on Sunday afternoon, and we went straight to meet, who seemed to be my companion's favorite investigator family, just because it was a family. They were excited, they were progressing. And I remember walking to their house, and my companion was kind of explaining okay, this is how you be safe in the streets and things like that. But we got to the house, and it's kind of hard in your first few weeks as a missionary, because all the members and all the investigators get really accustomed to the person that you just replaced in the area. So I'd show up and they'd say, oh, where's the other one, But that was kind of hard on me at first, but after a while I just kind of learned to deal with it. But so yeah, we went to go teach them, and we had a really good first lesson. It was my first lesson. They'd already had multiple lessons, and we were just kind of reading through the Book of Mormon with them. I didn't understand a lot of what was going on, but they were asking good questions and things like that. And then after that, it was already time to go home. So we went home. The next day was P-Day. I couldn't even tell you what we did. But the day after that, or P-Day at night, the next lesson we went and taught was to a couple that ended up becoming really important to me. As just they were kind of the first people I ever taught. And I was a little more comfortable with what was going on, so I knew what we were talking about. And we just went and we had a family home evening with them, and we shared a scripture, and we asked questions, and we just kind of got to know them. And they were an unmarried couple. Sonia and Diego were their names. And they had a little baby named Nadir, and it was really exciting. I remember walking back to our apartment from their house and just feeling like, wow, I'm a missionary, I'm doing it. And I just felt, the Spirit more strongly than I had up to that point, just because it was so personal to me, and it was becoming so real. And then, throughout the week, we found new investigators, and we taught a lot of other lessons, and it was just, that whole week was just a blur. It was just me kind of tagging along, and I don't really feel like I did a lot to help the companionship in that first week. But I definitely learned and grew a lot, and I started to make friends with members of the ward and with investigators and things like that. And it was just really exciting to cultivate those relationships and kind of plant the seed for future teaching of the gospel.